We were deep in the heart of the dense Philippine jungles, a group of battle-hardened U.S. Marines on a mission that had taken us far from the comforts of civilization. The air was thick with humidity and the sounds of nature, a symphony of insects and rustling leaves. Our senses were heightened, every crack of a branch making us tense and alert. Our mission was straightforward: gather intel on rebel movements and establish a secure base camp. But as we moved deeper into the jungle, an eerie feeling settled over us. The atmosphere was charged with an unsettling energy, as if we were intruding upon something ancient and sacred. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and cast long shadows through the trees, we set up camp near a small clearing. Our senses were on high alert, a constant awareness of the dangers that lurked in the wilderness. It was then that we heard it, the cry of a baby. Clear as day, carried on the wind, the sound sent shivers down our spines. We exchanged bewildered glances, disbelief etched on our faces. None of us could fathom how a baby could be out here, in the middle of nowhere. Did anyone else hear that? Private Jenkins whispered, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and confusion. We nodded, our attention now fully focused on the haunting cry that seemed to echo through the trees. It was impossible. A baby in the heart of the jungle, miles away from any village or settlement. Yet there was no denying what we had heard. With a mixture of concern and determination, we set out to locate the source of the cry. We followed the sound, moving cautiously through the undergrowth, our rifles at the ready. The jungle seemed to close in around us, the shadows growing longer as the day faded into night. As we shared our story with the world, we realized that we were not alone. Others had experienced encounters with the supernatural, with forces that transcended human understanding. Our journey had united us with a community that had faced the unimaginable, that had stared into the abyss and emerged forever changed. The cries of the baby still echoed in our minds, a haunting melody that served as a constant reminder of the encounter in the jungle. We had faced a horror that had shattered our perceptions, that had unveiled a truth beyond our comprehension. As we stood on the precipice of a reality-altering catastrophe, a choice had been made, one that had sealed the gateway, banished the entity, and preserved our world from an unspeakable fate. But the encounter had left us with a haunting realization. The darkness was always lurking, just beyond the edges of our reality, waiting for an opportunity to breach the boundaries and plunge us into a nightmare that defied explanation. And so we continue to share our story, to shed light on the shadows, to unveil the truth that had forever altered our lives. The cries of the baby, the symbols, the entity, they serve as a warning, a reminder that the world is far more complex and perilous than we could have ever imagined. The encounter in the jungle had shattered our perceptions, leaving us forever changed, forever haunted by the knowledge that the boundaries of reality are not as solid as they seem. The cries of the baby continue to echo in the depths of our minds, a haunting melody that will forever remind us of the horror we faced in the jungles of the Philippines, the horror that defied all explanation, that tested the limits of our understanding, and that left us forever marked by the darkness that lurked just beyond the edge of our reality. As we each went our separate ways, the encounter in the jungle continued to cast its shadow over our lives. The Marines who had once been a tightly knit unit found themselves haunted by the memories, united by a shared secret that set them apart from the rest of the world. Nightmares became a common occurrence, the cries of the baby echoing in our dreams, a constant reminder of the horror we had faced. Relationships strained as we struggled to share our experiences with loved ones who couldn't possibly understand the depths of our trauma. Attempts to uncover more about the symbols and the entity led us down a rabbit hole of research, spanning ancient texts, obscure folklore, and cryptic online forums. But the more we delved, the more elusive the truth became, as if the encounter had been a mere glimpse into a reality that was meant to remain hidden. I reached out to Simmons and Corporal Anderson, hoping to find solace in our shared experiences. But even as we confided in each other, it was clear that the encounter had changed us in ways that were impossible to articulate. The encounter had left us haunted, forever questioning the nature of reality and the boundaries of human knowledge. The world had become a place of uncertainty, a place where the darkness could emerge from the shadows at any moment. Years passed, and the encounter in the jungle remained a defining moment in our lives. The cries of the baby still echoed in our minds, a haunting reminder of the horror we had faced, a reminder that the line between the natural and supernatural was far more fragile than we could have ever imagined. And then one day I received a package. An old, weathered book in cracked leather, the same book that the entity had held in the encounter. It was a book of ancient rituals, of symbols and incantations that defied human understanding. As I flipped through the pages, I realized that the encounter had not been a chance occurrence. The entity had been a conduit, a vessel for a force that had been waiting for an opportunity to breach the boundaries of our reality. The book revealed that the symbols were a key, a link between our world and the realm of the entity. The cries of the baby had been a lure, a trap to draw us into a ritual that would have allowed the entity to cross over. I shared my findings with Simmons and Corporal Anderson, and together we realized that our encounter had been a narrow escape, a battle against a darkness that sought to consume our world. We knew that we couldn't keep the truth hidden. The world needed to know that there were forces beyond human understanding, that the boundaries of reality were not as solid as they seemed. We compiled our accounts, our research, and our experiences into a document, a testament to the encounter in the jungle. We reached out to researchers, journalists, anyone who might be willing to listen, to believe. The world was skeptical, as we had been when we first encountered the entity. But as we shared our stories, as we unveiled the symbols and the ancient rituals, a sense of unease settled over those who heard our accounts. The encounter in the jungle had left an indelible mark on us, a reminder that there were things lurking in the shadows, things that defied explanation and reason. The cries of the baby, the symbols, the entity, they were all a testament to the fragility of our understanding of the world. But then, with a final burst of effort, the entity's chanting became an ear-splitting shriek, a sound that felt like knives piercing my skull. The vortex pulsed, its edges reaching out toward me. I could feel the darkness, the malevolence, the abyss beyond our reality. And then, with a deafening roar, the vortex collapsed in on itself, disappearing as if it had never existed. The entity's presence faded, the grove returning to an eerie calm. The cries of the baby ceased, replaced by an oppressive silence. We stood there, gasping for breath, our bodies drenched in sweat. The danger had passed, the gateway sealed, the malevolent entity banished back to the realm from whence it came. "We did it," Simmons whispered, disbelief and relief mingling in his voice. But the relief was short-lived. The encounter had left an indelible mark on our souls, a realization that the world was far more complex and perilous than we could have ever imagined. The symbols, the figure, the entity, all of it defied logic and reason, a reminder that there were forces beyond human understanding. As we left the grove behind, making our way back to civilization, we knew that the encounter would forever haunt us. The cries of the baby, the symbols etched in our memories, the entity's hollow gaze, they were a testament to the darkness that lurked just beyond the edges of reality. The encounter in the jungle had shattered our perceptions, exposing us to a truth that we could never fully comprehend. We were Marines, warriors trained to face the horrors of the world. But in that grove, we had faced a horror that defied all explanation, a horror that would forever haunt our nightmares. We returned to our base camp, our mission completed, but our minds burdened with the weight of the inexplicable. The encounter in the jungle had left us changed, our understanding of the world forever altered. As we shared our account with our fellow Marines, the skepticism and disbelief were palpable. How could we expect anyone to comprehend the unimaginable horror we had faced? We were met with raised eyebrows and dismissive laughter, our experiences written off as the result of stress or exhaustion. But we knew the truth. The encounter had been real, the horror undeniable. The symbols, the entity, the vortex. They were etched into our memories, haunting us even as we tried to move on. Months turned into years, and though we had left the jungles of the Philippines behind, the memory of that encounter remained. The cries of the baby still echoed in our minds, a haunting melody that resurfaced in our dreams. We were haunted by the knowledge that there were forces beyond our understanding, darkness that existed just beyond the boundaries of our reality. We had witnessed a convergence of worlds, a collision of dimensions that had exposed us to a truth that no one else could fathom. As the vortex expanded, the jungle seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, a heartbeat that echoed the impending cataclysm. The cries of the baby reached a fever pitch, merging with the unearthly chorus emanating from the figure before us. We had to make a choice: run and preserve our lives, or confront the darkness head-on and attempt to prevent the unthinkable from happening. The Marines exchanged determined glances, our shared understanding unspoken but resolute. "Fire!" I shouted, the order ringing out in the grove. Gunshots tore through the air as we unleashed a barrage of bullets at the figure. But just like before, the bullets seemed to pass through it, as if it were impervious to the laws of our reality. The figure's chanting grew louder, its voice rising in a cacophony that threatened to shatter our minds. The vortex expanded further, its swirling maw stretching out toward us. We were running out of time, the boundary between worlds becoming increasingly unstable. "Fall back," Corporal Anderson yelled, his voice carrying a note of urgency. We retreated, our footsteps pounding against the ground as we put distance between ourselves and the altar. But the vortex seemed to follow us, its pull relentless and unyielding. As we regrouped at the edge of the grove, the figure turned its hollow gaze upon us, its eyes glowing with an unnatural intensity. It was as if it knew our intent: to disrupt the ritual, to prevent the entity from crossing over. "We can't let it come through," Simmons declared, his voice a mixture of determination and fear. "We have to close the gateway." But how? None of us had ever encountered anything like this before. The symbols on the altar seemed to be the key, but without understanding their meaning, we were powerless. As we stood on the precipice of a reality-altering catastrophe, a thought occurred to me, a desperate gamble, born of desperation and an unyielding will to survive. "Simmons, give me the pendant," I ordered, extending my hand. Simmons hesitated for a moment before handing me the pendant. The symbols on it seemed to glow with a faint light, resonating with the symbols on the altar. It was a long shot, but we had nothing left to lose. I stepped forward, the vortex now dangerously close. The entity's chanting reached a crescendo, its voice an agonizing cacophony that threatened to tear my sanity apart. Holding the pendant aloft, I focused on the symbols, willing them to resonate with the gateway's energy. For a moment, there was a surge of power, an almost tangible force that seemed to push back against the vortex. The entity's chant faltered, its form flickering as if it were struggling to maintain its presence. But we were Marines, trained to persevere in the face of adversity. We refused to let fear dictate our actions. We returned to the clearing where the encounter had taken place, hoping to find some clue, some evidence that could lead us to the truth. The clearing was unchanged, a silent testament to the encounter that had left an indelible mark. We scoured the area, looking for any signs of the figure or the symbols Simmons had described. But the jungle held its secrets close, revealing nothing to us. It was as if the encounter had never happened, as if the figure had been a mere figment of our imagination. Doubt began to creep in. Had we all experienced a collective hallucination? Were our minds playing tricks on us in the midst of the jungle's oppressive atmosphere? But then, just as we were on the brink of giving up, Corporal Anderson spotted something glinting in the underbrush. He bent down and retrieved a small pendant, a pendant adorned with the very symbols Simmons had described. As he held the pendant in his hand, a wave of recognition washed over me. The symbols were etched into my memory, the sight of them sending shivers down my spine. It was a symbol of ancient power, of darkness that transcended human understanding. Simmons' discovery reignited our determination. We scoured the area for more clues, piecing together fragments of the puzzle. And as we did, we uncovered a trail that led us deeper into the jungle, a path that seemed to beckon us toward an unimaginable truth. Days turned into nights as we followed the trail, the symbols guiding our way. The jungle seemed to close in around us, as if it were alive, reacting to our presence. The air was charged with an unsettling energy, a feeling that we were treading on sacred ground. And then we found it. A hidden grove, a place untouched by time. In the center of the grove stood a stone altar, its surface etched with the symbols that had haunted us for so long. It was a place of ancient power, a nexus where the boundary between the natural and supernatural world blurred. As we approached the altar, a sense of unease settled over us. We could feel the weight of centuries of darkness, a malevolent force that had been lurking in the shadows, waiting for an opportune moment to reveal itself. The cries of the baby echoed in the air, a haunting melody that seemed to emanate from the very stones of the altar. It was as if the grove itself was alive, a sentient entity that held the secrets of the past and the present. And then, in the midst of our trepidation, a figure emerged from the shadows, stepping into the moonlight. It was the same figure, the pallid skin, the hollow eyes, the very embodiment of the horror we had encountered. But this time, there was something different about the figure. Its movements were deliberate, purposeful, as if it were carrying out a ritual that had been millennia in the making. It approached the altar, its gaze fixed on us with an intensity that sent a chill down my spine. As the figure reached the altar, it raised its arms, its voice joining the cries of the baby in an unearthly chorus. The symbols on the altar began to glow, the air crackling with an otherworldly energy. It was a ritual of ancient power, a summoning that defied all comprehension. And then, as if in response to the figure's call, a rift in reality itself began to form above the altar, a swirling vortex of darkness and light, a gateway to a realm beyond human understanding. The cries of the baby grew louder, more desperate, as if it were a beacon calling forth an unspeakable force. We stood frozen, our minds unable to fully grasp the horror unfolding before us. The figure's purpose became clear. It was a conduit, a vessel for an entity of unimaginable power and malevolence. As the gateway continued to expand, its edges reaching out toward us, I felt a surge of terror unlike anything I had ever experienced. We were witnessing a convergence of forces that defied the laws of reality, a collision of worlds that threatened to unleash a darkness beyond. The night was restless, the sounds of the jungle taking on an ominous quality. Every rustle of leaves, every distant call of an animal seemed to carry with it a sense of unease. We took turns keeping watch, our eyes scanning the darkness for any signs of movement. As I stood guard, I couldn't shake the image of the figure from my mind. The pallid skin, the hollow eyes, the unnatural movements. It was as if that encounter had imprinted itself on my very soul, leaving an indelible mark that I could never escape. Hours passed, the darkness giving way to the faint light of dawn. The sense of relief that came with the approaching morning was short-lived, as we knew that the jungle held more secrets than we could fathom. Did anyone else notice the symbols on its clothes? Private Simmons spoke up, breaking the silence that had settled over us. I looked at him, surprised. I hadn't noticed any symbols in the chaos of the encounter, but as he described them, a series of intricate markings that seemed to glow faintly in the moonlight. A chill ran down my spine. Symbols. Corporal Anderson echoed, his brow furrowing. What do you mean, symbols? Simmons described the symbols in detail, and as he did, a sense of foreboding settled over us. None of us could make sense of the markings, yet there was something undeniably malevolent about them. We need answers, I declared, my voice firm. We can't just ignore what we've witnessed. We need to find out more about those symbols, about that thing. Agreement spread among the Marines, a collective understanding that we couldn't leave this mystery unsolved. Our mission had shifted from gathering intel on rebel movements to unraveling the enigma that had thrust itself into our lives. We spent the day poring over our limited resources, field manuals, survival guides, even a few books on folklore and myths. But the symbols remained elusive, their origins and meanings beyond our grasp. The frustration was palpable, a reminder that some mysteries were meant to remain unsolved. As night fell once again, we knew that we couldn't stay at our current campsite. The encounter had left us vulnerable, exposed to dangers that we couldn't fully comprehend. With a heavy sense of trepidation, we packed up our gear and moved deeper into the jungle, driven by a need to distance ourselves from the clearing where the encounter had taken place. Our new campsite was nestled beneath the dense canopy, the sounds of the jungle now a constant companion. But as we settled in for another restless night, we were acutely aware that we were not alone. The cries of the baby still echoed in our minds, a haunting reminder of the horror we had faced. Days turned into weeks as we continued our mission, all the while haunted by the encounter in the jungle. Our interactions with locals yielded no answers. They either avoided our questions or dismissed our accounts as superstition. As we pushed forward, the cry seemed to grow louder, more desperate. It was as if the sound was leading us deeper into the wilderness, a siren's call that we couldn't resist. Fear gnawed at the edges of my mind, but the Marines I served with were no strangers to danger. We pressed on, determined to uncover the truth. Hours passed, the jungle growing denser and more foreboding. The cry became an ever-present presence, a haunting melody that seemed to reverberate through the trees. We moved as a unit, our senses on high alert, every rustle and movement sending our hearts racing. And then suddenly, we emerged into a small clearing, the moonlight casting an eerie glow over the scene before us. In the center of the clearing, a figure knelt on the ground, cradling a bundle in its arms. The figure's back was turned to us, its form hunched and shrouded in darkness. The cry was now unmistakably coming from the bundle in its arms. The cry of a baby. My heart pounded in my chest, a mixture of awe and dread gripping me. "Hey!" I called out, my voice breaking the silence. The figure stiffened, its shoulders tensing as it slowly turned to face us. What I saw before me chilled me to the bone. It wasn't a human figure at all. Its skin was pallid and mottled, stretched tightly over skeletal features. Its eyes were hollow and devoid of emotion, yet they bore into us with an intensity that made my blood run cold. In its arms, the bundle wriggled, a baby wrapped in swaddling cloth, its cries now a desperate wail. But as the figure turned to reveal its face, I realized that this wasn't a baby at all. Its features were distorted, its eyes too large and devoid of color, its mouth a gaping void. I felt a surge of terror, a primal instinct that screamed at me to run, to flee from this unholy presence. But the Marines at my side were equally frozen, the sight before us defying all logic and reason. The figure's mouth opened, emitting a guttural sound that sent chills down my spine. It was a sound devoid of language, a cacophony of inhuman noises that seemed to echo from the depths of the abyss. And then, without warning, the figure began to move toward us, its steps slow and deliberate. The cries of the baby grew more frantic, more piercing, as if it sensed the danger that surrounded us. "Fire!" I shouted, snapping my comrades out of their paralysis. Gunshots echoed through the clearing as we opened fire on the creature. But the bullets seemed to pass right through it, as if it were nothing more than a phantom. The figure advanced, its movements unnatural and jerky. It was as if it defied the laws of physics, as if it existed in a realm beyond our comprehension. The cries of the baby became a deafening cacophony, an assault on our senses that left us disoriented and vulnerable. As the figure closed in, its hollow eyes fixed on us, a sense of futility settled over me. We were trapped in a nightmare, facing a horror that defied all explanation. The cries of the baby seemed to penetrate my very soul, a haunting melody that would forever haunt my nightmares. And as the figure reached us, its presence enveloping us in a suffocating embrace, I knew that we had stumbled upon something beyond human understanding, a malevolent force that had lurked in the depths of the jungle, waiting to ensnare unsuspecting souls. The encounter with the unholy figure in the jungle left us shaken to our core. We retreated from the clearing, our steps heavy with a mixture of fear and disbelief. The cries of the baby still echoed in our minds, a haunting melody that seemed to follow us even as we moved away. Back at our makeshift camp, we gathered around the flickering fire, the dancing flames casting eerie shadows on our faces. The Marines exchanged tense glances, our unspoken thoughts a shared recognition of the inexplicable horror we had witnessed. "What the hell was that thing?" Corporal Anderson muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. It wasn't human. It couldn't have been. No one had an answer. The encounter had shattered our understanding of reality, leaving us with more questions than we had answers for. We huddled together, our weapons within arm's reach, as the night wore on.